What is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Fellow Show. My name is Kyle. Tonight, it is Tuesday evening, October 8th. We're going to hang out for the next half an hour, 40 minutes or so, and basically just go over the waiver wire for week number 6. If you guys are just hanging out with us, get your questions in the chat room. We'll get to them as we go through, and then I'll kind of just review the news, the injuries, the things we're watching, and what we're waiting for more information on for the week. Good evening to Harris. Good evening to Daniel. Daniel says, is the Broncos D a must start no matter the opponent? I mean, right now, I think they're kind of like locked in as a top 5 defense right now, and I want to just take a peek at their schedule. I don't know if there's anything coming up that we're going to be scared about for the Broncos, but the way they're playing, they're making good offenses look bad. They're going to be playing the Chargers, the Saints, the Panthers. I'm starting them probably the next 3 weeks. I'm going to pause. They play at the Ravens. They play at the Chiefs. Those are 2 games I kind of want to think about. And then they play the Falcons, the Raiders, the Browns, the Colts, the Chargers. And then they finish up with the Bengals for fantasy championship here. So I would say 80% of the time, we're probably starting the Broncos, with maybe a couple games there that we're not quite so sure about. But I do love the Broncos defense right now. Hopefully you guys grabbed them last week. What do we think of Rico Dowdle rest of season? I'm glad you asked, Harris. I'm a big Rico Dowdle fan. I've watched, I've been kind of rooting for him all season, and he finally had a breakout game last week in terms of snaps. There were 76 total snaps available in the Cowboys game. Rico got 38 of them, which is pretty good. That's roughly half of the snaps. And Ezekiel Elliott saw 23. Hunter Lupke, the fullback, hybrid running back, saw 23. So Rico getting 50% of the snaps. That's the highest mark of his season so far. He ran the most routes among the running backs. It was 16 for Rico, 14 for Zeke, and 15 for Lupke. But the big number here was of the 28 carries that were given to running backs, 20 of them went to Rico. So and he looked good doing so. He ran the ball hard, 20 for 87 yards. He also looked good as a receiver. He's had 2 receiving touchdowns the last couple of weeks. I just think the fact that he did this against the Steelers bodes very well. And I think the coaching staff's going to continue to reward him with the vast majority of touches. I mean, we're talking 20 out of 28. That's almost 75% of the running back carries there. So I expect Rico going forward to probably be a running back 2. If you have Rico Dowdle, I think you can start him as a low-end RB2. And I do feel better about Harris's next question here. I do feel better about Rico than I do Rachaad White rest of season, because Rachaad White's going to continue to split time. Rachaad White, not as great of a runner. We know he's a good receiving back, but I am a little bit nervous about Bucky Irving continuing to take workload. And you don't really know what you're going to get every game with Rachaad White. Whereas Rico right now, he's trending up in the right direction. I'm just looking at Rico's numbers right now. He's gotten better every game so far this season. Let me just pull these up real quick. Where is Uncle Rico? And this weekend, they hit the Lions. That's not by any means a great matchup. The Lions have been a good team against the run. But again, we're seeing Rico, who the first 3 weeks, he got 8 carries, 7 carries, 8 carries. That's kind of his floor. And then week 4 against the Giants, 11 for 46. And then the other night against Pittsburgh, 20 for 87. And I think rushing touchdowns are going to be coming eventually for Rico Dowdle, and hopefully that Cowboys offense in general. But Rico probably locked into 8 to 12 points per game, whether, that's, 40 to 60 yards rushing and a catch or 2. It gets you not a great floor, 8 to 10 points, but when he's scoring touchdowns and he's catching the ball and making big plays, I do like Rico's safety there, and it's a good offense. So I'm going to go Rico Dowdle rest of the season over Rachaad White. Cowboys schedule coming up. Let me just click on this real quick. Cowboys schedule coming up. They get Detroit, then they're on bye. Then they're going to get San Fran, Atlanta, Philly, Houston, Washington, the Giants, the Bengals, the Panthers, the Bucks, and then they finish with Philadelphia. So overall, I'm not too scared of that schedule. Are you starting Kirk Cousins over Baker this week? I am a big fan of both guys this week. I think Baker Mayfield, though, at New Orleans. I know New Orleans, they didn't look great last night. The Chiefs kind of did whatever they wanted, but the Chiefs mainly dinked and dunked against this defense, whereas Kirk Cousins against the Carolina Panthers, that that sounds pretty fun to me. I think Kirk Cousins at Carolina. We've seen Carolina give up. I mean, they just let Caleb Williams throw for 304 yards and 2 touchdowns. They let Joe Burrow throw for 232 and 2 touchdowns. The Panthers have allowed 2+ passing touchdowns in all 5 games this season. I'm going to lean towards Kirk Cousins being the safe play, and just as good as he looked in that offense looked against Tampa Bay last week, I think Kirk is the safer play. Baker at New Orleans. Saints Bucks is like a weird game. Those are hard to predict. Baker's been hot 3 out of 5 games this year, but I think I'm going to ride the hot hand with Mr. Cousins. But it's really close. I think Kirk's got top 5 upside, though, for this week. Would you keep a second quarterback if you have Anthony Richardson? I think so. I don't hate Anthony Richardson's matchup this weekend at Tennessee. The Titans, they let Malik Willis get 25 points. They let Tyler Huntley get 11.84. They let Aaron Rodgers get 15. And they stifled Caleb Williams week 1. But they do allow quarterback points here. I think Anthony Richardson, I want to see him continuing to run and evolve as a passer. So I still think Richardson's got, top 10 QB upside. They're going to get Tennessee, Miami, Houston, Minnesota, Buffalo. Those are all games where they could be having to score a lot of points. So I still believe in Richardson. If I want to, I think it's smart to roster a QB2 with Richardson, whether that's a guy like Geno or Baker or maybe even like Trevor Lawrence or something like that. I do think it's wise to keep a second one just in case. Daniel says, Wicks or Ford need to drop one. The other will start as flex this week and be my bench the other weeks. Half PPR. So we're waiting for Nick Chubb to enter the mix. I still think that when Nick Chubb returns, Jerome Ford's going to continue to retain value as like the receiving back, and he's been pretty safe and steady. I mean, his bad games have been 7-point-something points. I guess in a half PPR, he does lose value. So I think for me, and I love Dontavian Wicks, but I usually tend to keep the running backs in this type of format, half PPR. I still think Ford's going to get his 8 to 10 touches running the ball and his 2, 3, 4 catches per game. So I think Ford's probably the more valuable guy. For this week, I like Jerome Ford's matchup against Philadelphia. Dontavian Wicks has a really good matchup against the Arizona Cardinals. But if we get Christian Watson, we're going to get Romeo Doubs back this week, it sounds. And then the chance that Christian Watson returns in a week or two, I see Ford as the better long-term hold over Wicks, but they're both tough. I think I'm going to lean holding on to Ford, though, just as he's a little bit safer week to week. Rico or Aaron Jones rest of season. So did we get an update on Aaron Jones? He was one of the injured players from last week that I thought we should maybe discuss. Let me just look real quick for Aaron Jones updates. And he's been playing really good this year. I think the answer is going to be Aaron Jones. He's going to be evaluated, and I guess he's considered week to week. They do get the bye this week, which is nice, but he's probably going to be a true questionable for week 7 against Detroit. I think that Vikings offense is running so hot right now, and Jones has been a big piece of what they're doing. You got to probably lean Aaron Jones over Rico Dowdle rest of the year. But again, the injury seal for Aaron Jones is broken. That makes me nervous. I would bet Aaron Jones is probably going to miss 2 or 3 games at some point during the year, if not more. So if you want safety, that's Rico. But I think right now Aaron Jones is the better play rest of season. Let me look at the Browns defense real quick for you there, Jerry. Good evening to Jerry, by the way. They're at Philadelphia this week, against Cincinnati, Baltimore. I don't really want to start them in any of those 3 games. I think you're looking at a team that, they get sacks. They've had one interception, one touchdown so far, but they're allowing points. They allowed Washington to hit 34, Dallas 33. They only stifled Jacksonville for 13, but the Giants scored 21 and the Raiders scored 20. This isn't a defense that I'm like, it's a must hold, I think, at this point. So I think for the next 3 weeks, you're probably not playing them against Philadelphia, not against Cincinnati, not against Baltimore. You maybe play them against the Chargers, and then it's their bye. So we're talking maybe 1 use in the next 5 weeks. I'm probably going to move on from a team like that. And then their fantasy, the other reason to maybe move on from the Browns is if you think your team's going to make the fantasy playoffs, week 15 they play Kansas City, week 16 they play at Cincinnati, and week 17 they play against Miami at home. So really tough schedule there for the Browns. I'm probably moving on from Cleveland. Justin Fields or Kirk Cousins? I'm going to go Kirk Cousins, and that one's not really close. We are getting rumors that Russell Wilson's going to be practicing in full this week for the first time. And, just with the Steelers losing the last couple games, there's a chance that Russell Wilson gets a start at some point. Now, Justin Fields is playing really well for fantasy. He's QB8 on the year. He's had really high floors in every game this season. Against the Raiders this weekend, I do like that opportunity for him, but I'm going to take the layup here with Kirk Cousins against a really bad Carolina defense. Eagles or Houston Texans defense this weekend. I'm going the Texans. And I know they haven't been great as a unit this year. They've allowed teams to score. They're not really getting sacks these past few games, but we're starting the Texans against a rookie quarterback, Drake May. He likes to take chances and take some risks. Maybe he provides a little spark for that offense, but I think starting the Texans is the safer play. I do like the Eagles defense quite a bit because the Cleveland Browns offense has been pretty bad. The opponents against Browns this year for defense have scored roughly 15, 11, 16, 6, and 20. So the Eagles might be the safer play. I think I'm going to change my answer to saying the Eagles are probably the defense that I want to play this week. Tight end pickup of the week. I want to just look and see who I listed as my favorite. I have on my favorite list on the fantasyfellowship.com, I have Cole Kmet, Dalton Schultz, Cade Otton, Likely, and Conklin. Let me just take a peek here. And I have to kind of widen at this. I think Zach Ertz against Baltimore is a sneaky one. He's only about 48% owned in ESPN leagues right now, and Baltimore's pretty bad against the tight end. 4 to 5 weeks, they've allowed the tight ends to go over double-digit fantasy points. They let the Bengals go 4 for 41 last week. So I think Zach Ertz is kind of a sneaky good play. I like Tyler Conklin a lot against Buffalo. I think that could be a sneaky one here. Buffalo, they've been not like a crazy bad team against the tight end, but so far through 5 games this year, they've allowed 11, 13, 12, 10, and 3.6 points to tight end. So I think Conklin intrigues me. Zach Ertz intrigues me. And then I kind of like Cade Otton as well as like a deeper option. But Cole Kmet would be my number one priority if you can get Cole Kmet. I mean, I'm not really sure what to do with Quentin Johnston. I think now that we have a healthy Josh Palmer back off the bye, you're probably looking at Quentin Johnston continuing to be like the number 2 or 3 receiver in terms of snaps and routes. I don't really trust that offensive volume, and you're never really going to feel good starting Quentin Johnston. It's kind of like, I guess I would compare Quentin Johnston's value to like a Romeo Doubs, where he could catch a touchdown one week, but he's not like a volume play type of receiver. I'm open to holding. I think if I had to hold on to one of these two guys, it's definitely Quentin Johnston over Zamir White. I think I'm ready to move on from Zamir White, honestly. But Quentin Johnston so far in full PPR leagues, week 1, 6.8 points. Week 2 against Carolina. Everybody eats against Carolina. He had 22. He had 12 against the Steelers and then just 2.3 against the Chiefs. So it's kind of a mixed bag. I don't know. And I guess this week, too, we're playing at Denver. I don't love that matchup. I like the matchup week 7 at Arizona, but he's going to continue to be a boom bust guy that you just never feel good in your lineup. But I'm willing to change my mind on that. I think I'm sold on Zamir White really not being a guy that I'm ever going to want in my fantasy lineups. It looks like Alexander Madison's the guy, and they're continuing to use Amir Abdullah a little bit here. So I think I'm kind of just out on Zamir White. I don't really see all that high of a ceiling, and he's kind of dealing with an injury at the moment right now. So I think Zamir White probably needs to go. I don't see him as an essential hold. All right, Nick Chubb. So they have activated his practice window. So when you're on IR and you get activated your practice window, that's a good thing. That means you have 3 weeks to get up onto the active roster. Otherwise, they shut you down for the season. So we know that at some point here, let me just pull it up. I want to see when their bye is. So Nick Chubb was on IR for weeks 1 through 4. He missed last week. Week 6 against Philly, I don't expect him to play. I expect him to continue to ramp up his practice efforts. Now, there's a chance that he's playing week 7 against Cincinnati. I would bet by week 8, though. That's probably the most likeliest time what we see Nick Chubb on the field. So I'm predicting week 7 or week 8. Now, when he does come back, I don't expect him to come in and get 12 to 14 carries that first game. I'm thinking he's going to be the number 2 in the committee behind Jerome Ford, and he's going to kind of be like what Deonta Foreman is right now for the Cleveland Browns. And Foreman, through 5 games here, he's had 9 carries and 14 carries. Those have been his best 2 games. I think you're probably looking at, again, for week 7 or 8, whenever Chubb returns, you're probably looking at 5 to 10 carries at the most. And a guy that, we don't want to start him in his first game back. We want to see what it looks like. Maybe he falls into the end zone, but I think they're going to take it easy with their superstar running back and let him ramp up. I do like him as a long-term guy that could help us win a fantasy championship. They have their bye in week 10, and I would bet if he, they let him get his legs underneath him weeks 8, 9, and 10, or weeks 8 and 9, and then who knows, by week 11, maybe Nick Chubb's back to getting 15, 16 carries per game and being a force here for the Browns. So I like Nick Chubb quite a bit. I'm not seeing any news on him yet, just that he is continuing to ramp up his practice habits. So I'm thinking week 7 or 8 for Nick Chubb. Oh, man, I don't know what to think about Davante Adams for the rest of the year. I think it's pretty clear he's not playing for the Raiders again, and we're coming up. I just want to look. When is that trade deadline, NFL? So we have until November 5th. Which is a good ways out yet. So we have at least 4 more games until that opportunity. I think there's a chance that we don't see Adams play at all until that weekend. Maybe they're holding out and hoping that they can get some better draft capital, but it's also Davante is going to get traded where he wants to be traded. So I think rest of season, if you have Davante Adams, I'm willing to hold on to him unless I can, flip him for something, whether it's a strong wide receiver 2 or something like that. But I think rest of season, we know that when Adams is on the field, he's one of the best receivers in the game. If he goes to the Ravens, I think he immediately becomes their wide receiver 1. If he goes to the Jets, I don't love that as much because Garrett Wilson is still pretty good. But with Rodgers, who knows? He could be, again, a top 10 wide receiver in the blink of an eye. So I think rest of season, you kind of have to hold on to him. I think you probably have found other ways to make wide receiver points of use here. So I'm not really interested in selling Davante Adams. I'm open to buying him though, because we know that when he does get traded, this hamstring injury is going to go away. And he's going to get thrust right back into 8 to 12 targets per game and help a team go win a Super Bowl. So I like Davante Adams. I think the trade rumors, I don't know. The Jets and the Ravens are the 2 teams that I think make the most sense. The Saints, now with Derek Carr injured, I don't know if we're going to see Davante Adams force his way to the Saints. So I'm still looking at the Ravens. Probably not the Chiefs unless the Chiefs offered a crazy good deal. I think for a lot of teams, they have to have the Raiders eat some of the money on the Davante Adams deal, and then they can offer them the draft picks that they want. So I'm holding out hope for Davante Adams. We know he's a really good player. It's just, it's hard to predict where he's going to end up. And hey, good evening to Justin. Hope you're doing well, man. Would you rather have Emmanuel Wilson over Zamir White? Sure. Because if Josh Jacobs gets hurt, Emmanuel Wilson's the starting running back for the Green Bay Packers. That sounds pretty good. Juju, the wide receiver 1 for the Kansas City Chiefs right now, and I forgot to actually type up my my post-game notes for that game. Let me just look at the numbers from last night. So in terms of routes, there was 44 total routes for the Chiefs last night. Justin Watson ran the most snaps, and he had 31 routes. Juju, 56 snaps and 29 routes. Xavier Worthy ran the most routes, though, of the receivers with 35. But it's very clear that those are their top 3 receivers. Now, with targets, there were 34 Mahomes targets. 10 went to Kelsey. 8 went to Juju. If you look back a couple years ago at Juju's numbers with the Chiefs, they were very good when you just look at the final season numbers. But week to week, they were very, very choppy. So I still am not sure that Juju is like a must-start wide receiver 3 going forward. But I'm willing to take the risk and make Juju one of the top waiver wire priority ads tonight. So Juju, I think he's going to be a 5 to 6 target guy per game. And we saw some of the big playability there. He looked as good as ever last night. So I'm open to Juju being a startable asset for fantasy. Any sleeper RBs to add? Let me look at my list here, my man. So my list for the top ads this week, and I'm sure you guys play in good leagues. These guys are probably owned, but I'm just going to read them off. It's Rico, Tank Bigsby, Bucky Irving, Alexander Madison. I think Ty Chandler's a sneaky ad, just we don't know if Aaron Jones is going to be ready after the bye. I think Tyrone Tracy Jr. should be added. I'm not going to be surprised if he continues to get more work on his plate. I think Roshan Johnson should have been picked up. The real sneaky ad here that you guys could probably not even have to spend any money on is Blake Corum. He finally got mixed in with the starters this past weekend against the Packers, and he ended up getting 5 carries for 25 yards, and he caught 1 for 8. Only 4.3 fantasy points, but this is kind of indicating that, hey, maybe he has hopped Ronnie Rivers as the RB2. And the good news is he looked good on his touches. 5 for 25 as a ball carrier and an 8-yard catch. He looked spry. When I saw him, so I was watching that game, I was like, oh, wow, like we got Blake Corum, and he's looking really good. So that made me turn my head. I think Blake Corum is a guy, again, they're on bye. You can maybe get him for free. I think Jalen Wright is a guy. Also, the Dolphins are on bye. You might be able to slide a guy like Jalen Wright or Blake Corum on your roster for free. And then if Trey Sermon's out there, right now it's looking like he's going to get one more start over Jonathan Taylor, but we'll see if JT practices tomorrow. Other sleepers here. Antonio Gibson, Justice Hill. I mentioned Blake Corum. I think Emmanuel Wilson's a good roster stash. Jalen Wright for sure. Tyler Goodson has some appeal if Jonathan Taylor's out. I did notice that Jalen Warren is available in roughly 50% of leagues. If Jalen Warren's on your IR or on your waiver wire, he should be added. But the other guy to keep an eye on is Cordero Patterson, who I thought was looking good before he got hurt with that ankle injury. Other guys to maybe take a look at, Derek Ogunbowale, because Joe Mixon and Dameon Pierce, we haven't seen these guys in a while, so we might see. And Ogunbowale was the RB1 last week, even though Cam Akers scored the touchdown. Ogunbowale is a sleeper to keep an eye on. And then the deepest of sleepers, Kamani Vidal for the Chargers. After the bye week, we might see the rookie get, finally activated into some games. So that's one I like. And then some IR stashes for you, whether it's Marshawn Lloyd, Kendre Miller, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Keaton Mitchell, or Audric Estime. I think those 5 guys are interesting sleepers. For this week, we have to hold on to Cam Akers, at least until the end of the week. I think there's a chance Joe Mixon misses again this week. Now, the concerning part for Cam Akers is he continues to look like fine, but they're going to keep on using Dare Ogunbowale. In terms of snaps last week, Dare Ogunbowale had 46. Akers had just 22. They gave Ogunbowale 15 carries to Akers' 9. So even if Mixon misses this week, there's a chance Dameon Pierce returns and makes this a 3-man committee. But it certainly looks like they really like Ogunbowale as kind of their lead back and definitely their third down back. He had 7 targets last week. So I don't think Akers is like a must start. Now it is against the New England Patriots, so maybe they just run the ball down their throats. So I think you got to wait. You got to hold on until Friday to make that move, I think, to cut Akers. And yeah, man, there's a lot of potential things that could have happened here. Robert Saleh, of course, dismissed this morning. Did not have him as the first coach fired on my bingo card. And I just wonder if I don't know. I just wonder if him and a lot of it has to do with Rodgers. I don't know if him and Rodgers disagreed on things or if, who knows really what happened. So it's unfortunate. I expect Saleh to be a defensive coordinator somewhere next year, though. I think it's a good thing, man. I think you're going to see, we're going to see some better passing numbers out of Drake May than we saw from Jacoby Brissett. And there's a chance that there's more dump offs to whether it's Gibson or Stevenson. Those guys might have a higher floor now with Drake May throwing the ball. You're also going to see Drake May. He's willing to take risks. He's willing to run with his legs, and he's also willing to throw downfield more. So you probably will see, more successful box scores out of New England Patriots. So I think this is a little shot in the arm of guys like Stevenson, Gibson, maybe Hunter Henry, maybe Jalen Polk, maybe Demario Douglas. All the Patriots, I think, get a little uptick of value right now with going to the better passer. Even though Drake May might not be winning games for them, I think he does lift the offense a little bit in terms of fantasy. And And yeah, that is a very good thought because right now the Browns, what do they have going for them this year? They might be, moving Amari Cooper or something like that. Who knows? They're 1-4. I don't expect them to go to Philadelphia and win this weekend. So looking at 1-5, and then they play the Bengals at home. That could be a 50-50 coin flip. And then they play the Ravens. So I'm expecting at least 2 losses in the next 3 games. So maybe Nick Chubb returns at some point during the Bengals or the Ravens game, but you're potentially looking at a 2-6 Browns squad. How much do they shut Nick Chubb down after they see him if their season's spiraling out of control? I could see that. I think it's still smart to hold on to Nick Chubb because it's Nick Chubb. If he looks good and he's back, and then he's back, and maybe the Browns turn their season around and make a push for a wild card. I think 9-8 could win a wild card this season, so that is a good thought. But I think it's going to take. We're not going to see like a startable Nick Chubb for fantasy until at least November yet. I do like Ray McCloud. Ray is the clear number 3 receiver for Atlanta, and actually in terms of snaps, he ran pretty much every snap last week against Tampa Bay. Now a lot of that was with Drake London exiting and returning, but Ray McCloud, he's the number 3, number 4 target. I'm never going to feel good about it in games where they're expected to be in like a shootout. I like a guy like Ray McCloud, but I think his week to week is going to be very volatile. He's kind of an underneath receiver, doesn't have big playability, but 6 for 66. He's kind of like a Demario Douglas type play where he's just going to rack up 4 or 5 catches and hopefully you get 40, 50 yards. So he's fine as like a low end, wide receiver 3 flex PPR option if you're in a pinch. Juju, Tolbert, Chandler, Dobbs, Lockett, Wicks on the waivers. Rank them. Oh man. Okay, so rest of season, I think I'm going to put Juju at the top. I'm going to go Tolbert number 2 because I think there's some steam there with Jalen Tolbert. I think he's starting to emerge as a potentially trustworthy target for the Cowboys offense. I mean, he had 10 targets, 87 yards, and a touchdown on 7 catches, and he's been continuing to play well. And I think he's now in the circle of trust for Dak Prescott. So I like Tolbert. I like Juju as the top 2. I like putting Chandler on my bench, though, because as soon as Aaron Jones misses a game, Ty Chandler is a top 15 running back for that week, and we like the Vikings. So I'm going to rank Chandler number 3. Dobbs, Lockett, and Wicks. I think Lockett is probably the guy that I would rather have over Dobbs and Wicks just because when the Packers have Reed and Dobbs and Wicks and Watson and Kraft all healthy, it's kind of like a ping pong. You don't know who's going to pop off. So I think Lockett as the clear number 3 for Seattle would be the move. And then I'm going to go Dobbs and then Wicks last. So rankings, Juju, Tolbert, Chandler, Lockett, Dobbs, Wicks. And yeah, Trey Sermon is a hold. If we get news that Jonathan Taylor is limited practice tomorrow, that's going to take some steam off. But I think if you have Trey Sermon, you got to hold out until Friday to see what Jonathan Taylor's practice week looked like. Again, I'm assuming no Jonathan Taylor this weekend. I like Trey Sermon's matchup against Tennessee. And yeah, man, Tank Bigsby. Let me this is a waiver wire show. Let me just kind of serve you guys and just tell you some of my favorite pickups for the week. I didn't even put Tank Bigsby on the list because he was a well-owned player already. But I think if you have a chance to pick up Tank Bigsby this weekend, you probably should. Travis Etienne still playing well, but he's got a shoulder thing that he's been kind of nursing. I think Tank Bigsby has looked like the better runner. And at this moment right now, they have a really nice 1-2 punch going. We've seen Tank Bigsby rip off big run after big run. I think he leads the league in yards per carry right now. And he had a big catch last week, 1 for 28. If he starts getting more work as a receiver and he's getting 7 to 10 carries per game, that's a really nice fantasy RB2 floor. So I'm very much open to Tank Bigsby being the number 1 pickup this week. But he is fairly owned. He's up there at did I just miss him? He's at 9.7% owned. I need to get him on my waiver wire list here because I think Tank Bigsby, yeah, he's my number 2 guy. I think Bigsby is in for a really nice outlook for the next few weeks. Palmer or Whittington rest of season? I'm going to go with Whittington just because that passing offense is more. It's a better passing offense. I think Josh Palmer is nice, but it's a very low volume passing offense out there. There's going to be weeks where Ladd McConkey or Quentin Johnston are guys that hop over or Josh Palmer. And Whittington right now, I mean, his last 2 games have been very, very good. And he continues to just get opportunities. He's running the routes as a top 3 receiver on that team. He's getting double-digit targets. I think Whittington, even when Kupp returns next week, Whittington's still going to be involved in the offense. And they always run 3 wide receivers, and we just don't know when Puka Nacua is returning. So I think rest of season, we're going to see Whittington continue to play in this offense, whereas I don't really trust the Chargers passing offense. No, Colts are one of the worst defenses in the league, and even though they're playing the Titans are coming off a bye. I personally don't trust the Colts defense very much. You're banking on, interceptions or fumble or a touchdown or something, which could totally happen with Will Levis. But it's a risky play. I think the Colts defense, I'd rather play Eagles, Texans, Tampa Bay. Of course, the Broncos. I'd maybe rather play the Bills. There's a few other teams I'd rather play over the Colts. Inceptivus, good evening. Would you trade Ramondre and Devontae Adams for Kenneth Walker? I think that's too pricey. I think that's too steep. And don't get me wrong, I love Kenneth Walker, but someone's trying to buy low right now on Devontae Adams. And Kenneth Walker's playing very well. He's had 3 very, very good games, but he's also had some injury concerns. I think Ramondre Stevenson, he's had the one truly bad game, the 0.3 game, but otherwise his floors are still startable. So I don't see that big of an upgrade from Kenneth Walker, and then to lose Devontae Adams over it, I think I'd rather hold on to Devontae Adams. Yeah, that one's Caleb Williams, not even close. And oh yes, Daniel, if you guys want to check out the rest of season rankings on the Fantasy Fellowship, it's just under the membership tab. But I updated my rest of season rankings the other day. At tight end, I have Jake Ferguson at tight end 3, behind McBride, Bowers, and then Ferguson at number 3. I think Jake Ferguson, he looks really good. He gives me, sometimes when he makes these plays, he gives me vibes of like a young Travis Kelce. So I'm very much interested in Ferguson. I think Ferguson's a must-start tight end every week. Justice Hill remains like a nice RB4 handcuff guy that, with bye weeks now, you could potentially whip him out there and hope for, 3-4 catches and maybe a big run or 2. He's not very trustworthy, though. He's had games of 5, 7, and 3. He's had 2 startable games as 11 and 21. You just never know when they're going to come. I think this weekend, though, against Washington, to me, that profiles as a nice ping-pong back-and-forth game where maybe they have to rely on Justice Hill as a receiving back. He's kind of just like a low-end RB2 bench potential spot. Not necessarily a must-hold. I think you can find better guys. I'd rather own some handcuffs potentially over Justice Hill, because even if Derrick Henry gets hurt, I don't think we're going to see Justice Hill all of a sudden take on a huge workload. I think they're going to find other guys to hand the ball off to and keep him in that role. But, I mean, I'd rather own Tank Bigsby. I'd rather own Roshan Johnson. I'd rather own, I don't know, for sure, Bucky Irving, Tyrone Tracy maybe. I'm looking for guys that could be starters over Justice Hill. Not really. I'm not really interested in that passing offense outside of Jacoby and Brock Bowers. I think Trey Tucker's fine. I'd rather have Trey Tucker over DJ Turner. Turner's been getting some carries, which is nice, but I just not quite interested in the Raiders' number 3 receiver. Mahomes on bye. Cousins the only trustable option on waiver. Should I try to pick him up? Yeah, I don't mind blocking my opponent from getting a potential top 5 QB play this week. If you have someone that you can cut that you don't care about, I think that's a good move. Yeah, sometimes you got to play defense, man. I think that's a totally wise idea. Otherwise, let me just kind of cover some more waiver wire options for this week. Quarterback, again, I have Kirk Cousins against Carolina. I think Caleb Williams against Jacksonville is a good one. Jared Goff at Dallas. I'm going to cross off Derek Carr here because it sounds like he's out for a few games. And then Daniel Jones against Cincinnati. That's not a bad option either. I already kind of covered the running backs. At receiver this week, Josh Downs, Juju Smith-Schuster, Dontavian Wicks, and Jalen Tolbert would be the top 4 guys that I'm looking for. Secondary guys include, if someone drops Leggett, pick him up. I think Lazard, Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, Alec Pierce, Michael Wilson, Jalen Polk, and Kendrick Bourne. And I'll add Demario Douglas to that as well. Tight ends for the week, Cole Kmet, Schultz, Otten, Isaiah Likely, Tyler Conklin. And then defenses for the week, Texans at New England, Bills at the Jets, Bears against Jacksonville, Chargers at Denver, and Falcons against Carolina. Those are just some of the defenses that I like for the week. Mooney or Tank Bigsby rest of season. That one's tough, Harris, because it depends. Like if Mooney's your number 3 or number 4 receiver, that's more valuable, I think. If Bigsby's your number 4 or 5 running back and he's not going to sniff your lineup, then I'm going to keep Mooney. But if Bigsby's your RB3 and you need that, like I think I got to keep Bigsby. But I think right now you got to go with Mooney, more valuable over Bigsby right now. Injuries we're monitoring for week number 6 here at quarterback. You have Anthony Richardson, which it sounds like he's going to give it a go. Aaron Rodgers has a low ankle sprain, but I think he's going to play. We got Tua Tagovailoa, potential return for week 8. Will Levis has an AC joint sprain. It sounds like he's going to go this weekend, though. The bye week maybe helped him a little bit there. And then Derek Carr is out. He's going to be out for at least 2 or 3 games, it sounds like. At running back, we're watching the health of Jonathan Taylor with his ankle. Devon Achane has a concussion. He should be back for week number 7. Good news for Christian McCaffrey owners, man. He's not playing this Thursday Night Football, but there's a chance that he could play week 7 or week 8. I don't think he plays week 7. I think week 8 is the real possibility. Aaron Jones with the hip injury, I think he's 50-50 to play week 7. Joe Mixon with the ankle. That one's weird because he didn't practice at all last week. And then week 4, he got a Friday practice in. So there might have been a setback in there with that ankle. I don't think Joe Mixon plays this weekend. We'll see about Devin Singletary and the groin issue. I have him more questionable to doubtful. So Tyrone Tracy, maybe another week as a starter. Nick Chubb, I have him doubtful. Jonathan Brooks, he hasn't been designated to return yet, I believe. So we're still out another 2 to 3 weeks at least on Jonathan Brooks. I don't know if Zamir White's going to go with the groin injury. Jalen Warren might go this weekend, though, with the knee. Same thing with Cordero Patterson with the ankle. And then Dameon Pierce there with the hamstring. Yeah, I was just going to cover the receivers here. It sounds like A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith are both fine. That was the report that I saw earlier today. A.J. Brown, I have him as probable with the hamstring, and Devonta Smith, I have him probable with the concussion there. Nico Collins, if you guys have Nico, prepare for him not to play this weekend, and he might miss 2 games. You know, hamstrings are a terrible, tricky thing for wide receivers and pretty much any skill player here. So be wary of that hamstring. I think Nico Collins sits this weekend. I think Malik Neighbors is probable with that concussion. Cooper Kupp sounds like he's playing week 7. We'll see about Khalil Shakir with the ankle injury for Buffalo. We'll also see about the ankle injury for Christian Watson. I have him as doubtful. Xavier Leggett questionable with a shoulder injury. And then tight ends. It looks like David Njoku re-injured himself. He's got a knee injury. I don't know what his status is going to be for the week. I have him as questionable. Sounds like Evan Ingram's going to be back for the Jags. TJ Hawkinson, his potential return after the bye week 7 or 8. And then Taysom Hill questionable with a rib injury. Do you think CH could take Hunt's job? Should we pick him up? I'm not going to say go rush and pick up Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Kareem Hunt looks really good. And I'm mad because I missed on Kareem Hunt. I whiffed on him. I did get him in 1 or 2 leagues, but I didn't think Kareem Hunt would look as good as he has looked. And last night pretty much showed that, hey, he's the bell cow back. You know, they're not even using Carson Steele anymore. They're rarely putting out Pirine. It's all Kareem Hunt right now. I do think Clyde Edwards-Helaire could come into the mix, but he's just an end of the bench guy that maybe you slide into the IR, that kind of thing. I think it's Kareem Hunt show. I don't know about that, Harris. What did Mike Tomlin say today? He's listed as doubtful by Tomlin. Okay. So he's considered doubtful. I just saw that report now. Well, we're watching for Jalen Warren's practice reports. If someone continues to drop him, I want him on my teams because I think Najee Harris has looked bad this year. And as soon as Warren and or Patterson are ready to go, there's a chance that these guys really just eat into Najee's workload. So Steelers running backs, both Carrero and Jalen Warren, we're watching for their reports. If they get limited practices in this week, that's good. That means they're on track to play week 7. But yeah, I'm seeing the doubtful reports there. So we'll keep an eye on the Steelers backs. Kraft is the real deal, man. And ever since week 1, where the Packers basically just forgot about Luke Musgrave, like we're seeing Tucker Kraft run all the routes. He's involved in the offense. They do tight end screens to him. He's a really good player. I think my next dynasty ranking update is going to have Tucker Kraft ranked maybe top 10 in dynasty rankings. So I'm just looking to see where I have Tucker Kraft right now in my dynasty rankings. I have him, let me see here. I've got him as my tight end 17 right now. I'm probably moving Tucker Kraft up towards like tight end 7 or 8. He is the real deal. I don't think they trust Luke Musgrave. He's a complete blocker. He's kind of like a George Kittle type mold where he's a very, very good all-around football player. We love Tucker Kraft. They're probably, I think I'm still probably ranking Laporta ahead of Kraft right now, but in my rest of season rankings, let me see where I moved those tight ends. I have Laporta at tight end 5. I have Kraft at tight end 8. So it's close. I'm going to lean slightly Laporta. I think he's the better talent. He's also in a very, very good passing offense, but we've seen Laporta kind of get left behind, whether it's an Amon-Ra or a Jameson Williams game. I do think Tucker Kraft, he's not going to ever be a volume type tight end. He's going to be a guy that, capitalizes on 3 or 4 or 5 catches, and you see what he does. So I still think Laporta is probably the higher ceiling tight end. But let me know if you guys have any final questions. I'm going to get out of here in a minute or so. That was the Week 6 waiver wire program. I'm going to go live tomorrow night. I really liked what we had going with us last Wednesday night, so we'll hang out and we'll talk any player practice news that we need to go over. We'll talk any start sits you guys need to worry about, and we'll kind of just hang out on Wednesday nights. 7 o'clock tomorrow night Central Time. We'll hang out and do a start sit program. But this was fun. I hope you guys get all your bids. Hope you guys get everybody you want on the waiver wire. It's not a crazy week, but I do think there's some gems on the wire this weekend. And then Trey Sermon. So I'm expecting Jonathan Taylor to not play this weekend. He had a ankle sprain, and it was the ankle that he had surgery on last year. So I think there's a good chance that Jonathan Taylor misses this week. And even if he plays, Trey Sermon still might have, a little bit more workload than he normally would. But I think when you're talking about your star running back, you want to make sure he's all the way good to go. If he practices limited tomorrow, he's got a chance to play this weekend, though. So I'm assuming, again, no practice. But if you have Trey Sermon on your roster, hold on to him for the next few days. If we see that Jonathan Taylor is going to play, I think you could move on from Sermon. But also, like if Taylor goes back out and re-injures that ankle, there's a chance that we're just calling up Sermon again. So I'm willing to hold on to Sermon for one more week. He looks like the bell cow back. They do like Goodson as a receiving kind of change of pace back, but I think Sermon will continue to be the guy that leads the team in touches. So that's it for Week 6 waiver wire. Thank you guys for hanging out with me tonight. I hope you guys get all your waiver wire options that you guys are looking at. And yeah, thank you. We'll see you guys tomorrow night, 7 o'clock Central Time. Peace.